Welcome back. Today let's explore the fascinating yet tragic story of Roscoe Arbuckle. Roscoe "Fatty" Arbuckle was a prominent figure in American silent cinema, known as an actor, comedian, director, and screenwriter. His career began with the Selig Polyscope Company, but he later found success at Keystone Studios, working alongside legends like Mabel Normand, Harold Lloyd, and his own nephew, Al St. John. He didn't just shine on screen, he played a pivotal role behind the scenes, mentoring rising stars such as Charlie Chaplin and discovering comedy icons like Buster Keaton, Monty Banks, and Bob Hope. By the 1910s, Roscoe had firmly secured his place as one of Hollywood's brightest stars, even becoming one of its highest-paid actors after signing a lucrative $14,000 contract with Paramount Pictures in 1920. Actress Virginia Rappe fell seriously ill during a party he hosted at San Francisco's St. Francis Hotel and tragically passed away 4 days later. A friend of Rappe accused Roscoe of assault and indirectly causing her death. This led to 3 sensationalized trials between November 1921 and April 1922. Although the first 2 trials ended without a verdict, the third resulted in his full acquittal, with the jury going so far as to issue a written apology for the ordeal. Following the trials, Roscoe faced severe backlash. After the trials, Adolf Zukor, who was the president of Famous Players Lasky, decided to prohibit Roscoe's films. Studio head Adolf Zukor ultimately decided sacrificing Roscoe's career was necessary to safeguard Hollywood's reputation. While the ban was lifted after a year, his career never fully bounced back. Despite financial support from his friend Buster Keaton, who offered him a cut of his company's profits, Roscoe struggled to regain his former glory. Using the pseudonym William Goodrich, he shifted to directing and made a brief acting comeback in 1932-33 with short comedies for Warner Brothers. Tragically, just as he seemed poised for a revival, signing a feature film deal with Warner Brothers, Roscoe died of a heart attack in 1933 at just 46 years old. Roscoe's story begins in Smith Center, Kansas, where he was born on March 24, 1887. He was one of 9 children born to Mary E. Gordon and William Goodrich Roscoe. His birth, weighing in at over 13 pounds, raised suspicions from his father, who believed Roscoe couldn't be his son given both parents' slight builds. This doubt led him to name his son after Senator Roscoe Conkling, a scandal-ridden figure he despised. His mother's health suffered after his difficult birth, ultimately leading to her death when he was just 11 years old. When Roscoe "Fatty" Arbuckle was almost 2, his family packed up and moved to Santa Ana, California. By the time he was 8, Roscoe joined Frank Bacon's company for a local performance. It was there that he discovered his knack for entertaining. His father, who had always been tough on him, refused to support him. Left to fend for himself, Roscoe worked odd jobs at a hotel. A professional singer noticed him and encouraged him to enter an amateur talent show. It didn't start off great. He initially flopped, but Roscoe's quick wit saved the day. In a burst of comedic genius, he somersaulted into the orchestra pit to avoid being dragged off stage, leaving the audience in stitches. That unexpected moment won him the competition. By 1904, Sid Grauman, a prominent theater owner, invited Roscoe to perform at the Unique Theater in San Francisco. From there, Roscoe joined the Pantages Theater Group, touring up and down the West Coast. In 1906, he became part of a vaudeville troupe led by Leon Errol, performing at venues like Portland's Orpheum Theater. Roscoe quickly rose to prominence as the troupe's headline act. On August 6, 1908, Roscoe tied the knot with Minta Durfee, an actress who became both his life partner and frequent co-star. Roscoe's theater work eventually took him international. As part of the Morosco Burbank Stock Company, he performed throughout Asia, including stops in China and Japan, before returning to the U.S. in early 1909. That same year, his film journey officially began when he joined the Selig Polyscope Company and appeared in Ben's Kid. Roscoe's time with Selig was inconsistent until 1913, when he briefly worked with Universal Pictures before catching his big break. He became a standout star in Max Sennett's Keystone Cops comedies. Despite his size, Roscoe steered clear of cheap, fat jokes. Instead, he blended acrobatic brilliance with a unique comedic style. Roscoe's talents weren't limited to comedy. He was also a skilled singer, so impressive that legendary opera tenor Enrico Caruso once advised him to ditch acting entirely and pursue singing. Max Sennett, reminiscing about their first meeting, marveled at Roscoe's grace. He could effortlessly glide up a staircase, clap his hands, and pull off a backward somersault with the precision of a trained gymnast. Films starring Roscoe were lively, packed with visual jokes and chase sequences. He had a particular fondness for the now iconic pie-in-the-face gag, a staple of silent-era comedy. Roscoe even starred in the first known pie-throwing scene in the 1913 Keystone short A Noise from the Deep, where he teamed up with Mabel Normand. Through his versatility and undeniable charm, Roscoe cemented his legacy as one of the silent era's most gifted comedians. In 1914, Paramount Pictures made an unprecedented offer to Roscoe, Fatty Arbuckle, and Mabel Normand. $1,000 a day, 25% of all profits, and complete creative control to star in their films. By 1918, Roscoe was offered a staggering 3-year, $3 million contract by Paramount. However, by 1916, Roscoe's health began to deteriorate. A severe leg infection developed into a carbuncle, and doctors even considered amputating his leg. Although he ultimately kept his leg, the recovery process left him addicted to morphine. Following his recovery, Roscoe launched his own film company, Comique, alongside Joseph Schenck. Comique produced some of the silent era's most iconic short films. But in 1918, Roscoe handed over his controlling interest to Buster Keaton and accepted Paramount's lucrative $3 million deal to produce up to 18 feature films over 3 years. Despite his professional success, Roscoe disliked his screen nickname, Fatty, which had followed him since childhood. He often reminded people that Fatty was just a character he played, not his real identity. Off-screen, he discouraged anyone from calling him by that name. On September 5, 1921, Roscoe decided to take a break from his demanding film schedule. Despite suffering from second-degree burns on his buttocks due to a recent on-set accident, he drove to San Francisco with friends Lowell Sherman and Fred Fishbach. The trio checked into the St. Francis Hotel, reserving 3 rooms. Roscoe and Fishbach shared room 1219, Sherman stayed in 1221, and room 1220 was set aside as a party suite. Several women joined the gathering, including 26-year-old aspiring actress Virginia Rapp. During the party, Rapp fell seriously ill in room 1219, prompting the hotel doctor to examine her. He attributed her symptoms to intoxication and administered morphine to calm her. During her stay, Maud Delmont, a companion at the party, accused Roscoe of raping her. However, the doctor who examined Rapp found no evidence of sexual assault. Tragically, Rapp died the next day from a ruptured bladder. It was later revealed that she suffered from chronic urinary tract infections, which alcohol exacerbated, and she had a habit of tearing at her clothes during episodes of severe pain. Despite rumors attempting to tarnish her reputation, the autopsy confirmed she had never been pregnant or undergone an abortion. Delmont's accusations escalated when she told police that Roscoe's weight caused Rapp's bladder to rupture. Witnesses, however, testified that Roscoe had simply used the ice to soothe Rapp's abdominal pain. Roscoe consistently denied any wrongdoing. William Randolph Hearst's newspaper empire capitalized on the scandal, churning out sensationalized stories that painted Roscoe as a depraved predator who preyed on innocent women. Fueled by the era's yellow journalism, the coverage exaggerated every detail, and Hearst later admitted the scandal sold more papers than anything since the Lusitania tragedy. Meanwhile, morality groups demanded Roscoe face the death penalty. The fallout was wrecking not only Roscoe's career, but also his personal life. Those who knew Roscoe described him as a kind man who was notably reserved around women. Some even called him the most virtuous man in Hollywood. Despite this, studio executives, eager to avoid bad press, instructed Roscoe's friends and colleagues to remain silent publicly. Charlie Chaplin, who was in England at the time, expressed disbelief over the accusations, recalling Roscoe as a gentle and easygoing man. In contrast, actor William S. Hart, who had no personal connection to Roscoe, made damaging public remarks assuming his guilt. In response, Roscoe later wrote a satirical film premise mocking Hart as a villainous figure, which Keaton developed into the 1922 film The Frozen North. Hart, offended, refused to speak to Keaton for years. San Francisco District Attorney Matthew Brady, an ambitious man with gubernatorial aspirations, publicly declared Roscoe's guilt and coerced witnesses into providing false testimony. However, the defense produced a letter from Delmont revealing her extortion plot. Another witness, Zay Preven, testified that Rapp had told her on her deathbed that Roscoe had hurt her. Despite this, the judge found no evidence of rape, but ruled that Roscoe could be charged with first-degree murder. Roscoe was arrested on September 17, 1921, and arraigned for manslaughter. After spending nearly 3 weeks in jail, he was released on bail. His trial began on November 14, 1921, in San Francisco. Roscoe hired Gavin McNabb, a skilled local attorney, to lead his defense. The primary witness for the prosecution was Preven. At the start of the trial, Roscoe assured his estranged wife Minta Durfee of his innocence. Believing him, she attended court regularly to show her support. However, public sentiment was so hostile that Durfee was even shot at while entering the courthouse. During the trial, the prosecution called several witnesses. Among them was Betty Campbell, a model who attended the party. She claimed to have seen Roscoe smiling just hours after the assault. Grace Halston, a nurse, suggested it was likely Roscoe had raped Virginia Rapp and caused bruises on her body. Dr. Edward Heinrich, a criminologist, stated that fingerprints on the hallway door indicated Rapp had tried to escape, but was stopped by Roscoe. Additionally, Dr. Arthur Beardsley, the hotel doctor, testified that Rapp's bladder appeared to have been damaged by some external force. However, during cross-examination, Campbell admitted that the prosecutor, Brady, had threatened her with perjury charges if she didn't testify against Roscoe. Dr. Heinrich's fingerprint evidence was discredited when a hotel maid testified she had thoroughly cleaned the room before the investigation, making it unlikely any fingerprints remained. Beardsley conceded that Rapp never mentioned being assaulted during her treatment. Nurse Halston also admitted that Rapp's bladder rupture could have been caused by a pre-existing condition, such as cancer, and that her bruises might have been from the heavy jewelry she wore that evening. On November 28, Roscoe appeared in court to testify as the last witness for the defense. His testimony was straightforward and composed, even under intense questioning. He recounted that Rapp entered the party room around noon that day. Later, when he went to his room to change clothes, he found Rapp in his bathroom, vomiting. Roscoe said she told him she felt unwell and asked to lie down. He carried her to the bedroom and called on other party guests to assist. When they returned to check on her, they found Rapp on the floor, tearing at her clothes and convulsing. To calm her, they placed her in a tub of cool water. Eventually, Roscoe and another guest moved her to room 1227 and called the hotel manager. At the time, everyone, including the hotel doctors, assumed Rapp was simply intoxicated and would recover after resting. Roscoe then left to drive his acquaintance, May Taub, into town. Throughout the trial, the prosecution leaned on medical evidence to argue Rapp had been suffering from an illness. Roscoe maintained he had no knowledge of any such condition. During cross-examination, Assistant Leo Friedman aggressively accused Roscoe of deliberately avoiding calling a doctor. Roscoe remained calm and firmly denied ever harming or assaulting Rapp. He also stated that he had never made inappropriate advances toward any woman in his life. After more than 2 weeks of testimony, involving 60 witnesses for both the prosecution and defense, including 18 doctors who discussed Virginia Rapp's medical condition, the defense rested its case on December 4, 1921. 5 days later, the jury announced it was deadlocked after nearly 44 hours of deliberation. With a 10-2 split leaning toward a not guilty verdict, the judge declared a mistrial. The defense quickly focused on one juror, Helen Hubbard, who had reportedly vowed to vote guilty until hell freezes over. She refused to review evidence or trial transcripts, claiming her decision was final from the start. While Hubbard became the center of media attention, some other jurors admitted they believed Roscoe was guilty. During deliberations, a few initially sided with Hubbard, but later changed their votes, leaving only Thomas Kilkenny to stand with her. The second trial began on January 11, 1922, with a new jury, but the same legal teams and judge. The evidence was largely the same, though one witness, Zay Previn, testified that Prosecutor Brady had pressured her to lie during the first trial. Another witness, Jesse Norgard, a former Culver Studio security guard, claimed Roscoe had once offered him money for the key to Rapp's dressing room. However, during cross-examination, Norgard's credibility crumbled. It was revealed he was an ex-convict facing charges for sexually assaulting a child and was hoping for a lighter sentence in exchange for his testimony. The second trial also delved into Rapp's personal life, detailing her history of heavy drinking and alleged promiscuity. Key evidence from the first trial was discredited, including testimony about Roscoe's fingerprints on the hotel bedroom door. Heinrich, the expert who had initially supported the fingerprint claim, backtracked and admitted the evidence was likely fabricated. Confident in their case, Roscoe's defense team chose not to have him testify. However, some jurors interpreted Roscoe's silence as a sign of guilt. After 5 days of deliberation spanning more than 40 hours, the jury once again deadlocked, this time with a 10-2 majority favoring conviction. On February 3, 1922, the judge declared another mistrial. By the time Roscoe faced his third trial, his career had been shattered. His films were banned, and for 7 months, newspapers were flooded with lurid tales of Hollywood scandals, orgies, murders, and moral corruption. Meanwhile, Maud Delmont, the woman who initially accused Roscoe, was traveling the country, branding herself as the woman who signed the murder charge against Roscoe, and giving lectures about the supposed depravity of Hollywood. The third trial began on March 13, 1922, and this time Roscoe's defense team wasn't taking any risks. Led by Gavin McNabb, the defense adopted a bold strategy, thoroughly dismantling the prosecution's case. McNabb conducted rigorous cross-examinations of every witness, exposing inconsistencies. He also introduced evidence about Virginia Rapp's troubled past and medical issues, which cast further doubt on the accusations. The prosecution suffered another blow when a key witness, Fred Fishback, fled the country and couldn't testify. As in the previous trials, Roscoe himself took the stand as the final witness. He passionately denied the accusations, offering his version of the events at the ill-fated party. His testimony was heartfelt and unwavering. It was rumored that Buster Keaton, a close friend of Roscoe, attended the trial and provided evidence that helped clear his name. Delmont, on the other hand, was revealed to have a history of involvement in prostitution and extortion, further discrediting her claims. The jury began deliberating on April 12, and it took them only 6 minutes to reach a unanimous decision. Not guilty. Remarkably, 5 of those minutes were spent drafting a formal apology to Roscoe for the ordeal he had endured. In their statement, the jury declared that not only was Roscoe innocent, but he had been the victim of a grave injustice. They praised his honesty on the stand. They described the incident at the hotel as an unfortunate accident for which Roscoe bore no responsibility. The jury expressed hope that the public would accept their verdict and restore Roscoe's reputation. After the verdict was read, The jury foreman personally handed the written apology to Roscoe, who cherished it for the rest of his life. In a rare and touching gesture, every member of the jury, along with the alternates, approached Roscoe to shake his hand or embrace him, offering personal apologies. They even posed for photographs with him, a striking moment in legal history. Later, some experts speculated that Rapp's bladder rupture might have been caused by an abortion she had undergone shortly before the party. Unfortunately, her organs had been destroyed during the investigation, making it impossible to confirm this theory. While Roscoe was acquitted of the criminal charges, he was forced to plead guilty to violating the Volstead Act due to alcohol being served at the party. For this, he paid a $500 fine. However, the financial toll of the trials was devastating. He owed over $700,000 in legal fees and had to sell his home and cars to cover some of the debt. Although Roscoe was legally exonerated, the damage to his career and reputation was immense. The case remains one of the most infamous scandals in Hollywood history, a cautionary tale of how fame and public opinion can turn on a dime. The scandal and subsequent trials severely tarnished Roscoe "Fatty" Arbuckle's public image. Despite being acquitted and receiving an official apology, his reputation never fully recovered. Just 6 days after Roscoe's acquittal, on April 18, 1922, Hayes banned him from working in the U.S. film industry and urged theaters to cancel all showings of Roscoe's movies. Exhibitors complied, effectively erasing him from the screen. Later that year, in December 1922, public pressure forced Hayes to lift the ban. However, Roscoe still couldn't find work as an actor. Most theaters refused to screen his films, many of which have since been lost. One of the few surviving features, Leap Year, was shelved by Paramount in the U.S. due to the scandal, though it eventually saw a release in Europe. With Roscoe's career in ruins, his friend Buster Keaton stepped in to help. In March 1922, Keaton struck a deal to give Roscoe 35% of the profits from his production company, Buster Keaton Comedies, to provide him with some financial relief. Roscoe's case was just one of several scandals that rocked Paramount during the early 1920s. In 1920, actress Olive Thomas died after ingesting mercury bichloride, a treatment her husband, Jack Pickford, had been using for syphilis. The incident sparked rumors of suicide. In 1922, the murder of director William Desmond Taylor cast a shadow over the careers of actresses Mary Miles Minter and Mabel Normand, the latter having worked with Roscoe. Wallace Reed, another Paramount star, succumbed to a morphine addiction in 1923. Then, in 1924, filmmaker Thomas H. Ince died under mysterious circumstances aboard William Randolph Hearst's yacht. In the wake of the scandal, Roscoe's personal life also unraveled. His wife, Mint Durfee, filed for divorce in November 1923, citing desertion, though the two had been separated since 1921. Despite the split, Durfee maintained that Roscoe was a kind man. After briefly reconciling, Durfee filed for divorce again, this time while in Paris. Roscoe later married Doris Dean on May 16, 1925. Attempts to revive his filmmaking career were met with resistance, as distributors remained wary of his tarnished name. Overwhelmed by rejection, Roscoe turned to alcohol, which his first wife later described as his only source of comfort during this dark period. Keaton continued to support him, offering work behind the scenes. Roscoe contributed to the story for Keaton's short film Daydreams and reportedly co-directed parts of Sherlock Jr. In 1925, a short film called Character Studies, filmed before the scandal, was released, showcasing Roscoe alongside stars like Keaton, Harold Lloyd, Rudolph Valentino, Douglas Fairbanks, and Jackie Coogan. In 1924, Photoplay magazine featured an article where James R. Quirk expressed his hope for Roscoe to return to the screen. He remarked that America prides itself on fairness, and questioned whether Roscoe was being treated justly after his career was derailed by scandal. After his fall from stardom, Roscoe transitioned to directing under the pseudonym William Goodrich. According to author David Yallop, the alias was inspired by Roscoe's father, William Goodrich Roscoe. However, another story credits Buster Keaton with suggesting the pun "will be good" as a potential pseudonym. Between 1924 and 1932, Roscoe directed several comedy shorts for educational pictures using his pseudonym. These films often featured lesser-known comedians. Actress Louise Brooks, who worked with Roscoe on Wendy Riley Goes Hollywood, recalled that he seemed distant and disengaged on set, likely due to the scandal that had shattered his career. She described him as kind yet emotionally withdrawn. One of Roscoe's notable projects as a director was the Eddie Cantor feature Special Delivery, released by Paramount and co-starring William Powell and Jobina Ralston. His most high-profile directorial work was The Red Mill, a film starring Marion Davies. In 1928, Roscoe partnered with Dan Coombs to reopen the Plantation Club near MGM Studios, renaming it Roscoe's Plantation Cafe. However, by 1930, Roscoe sold his share, and the venue underwent several name changes, eventually becoming the Plantation Trailer Court and later Foreman Phillips County Barn Dance. On the personal front, Roscoe faced more turmoil. In 1929, his second wife, Doris Dean, filed for divorce. A few years later, on June 21, 1932, Roscoe married Addie Oakley Dukes McPhail in Erie, Pennsylvania. In the same year, Roscoe signed a deal with Warner Brothers to star in 6 two-reel comedies, marking his return to acting under his real name. These films, produced at Vitaphone Studios in Brooklyn, were the only recordings of his voice. The shorts featured appearances from silent film comedian Al St. John, Lionel Stander, and Shemp Howard. One of the films even included slapstick grocery store gags reminiscent of Roscoe's earlier work in The Butcher Boy, 1917, with Fritz Hubert playing his assistant in a nod to Buster Keaton's iconic style. The Vitaphone shorts enjoyed immense success across America. However, when Warner Brothers tried to introduce the first one in the United Kingdom, the British Board of Film Censors blocked its release. They pointed to a decade-old scandal and refused to issue an exhibition certificate. On June 28, 1933, Roscoe wrapped up filming his final two-reel short. The following day, he inked a contract with Warner Brothers to take on a lead role in a feature-length movie. That evening, he went out with friends to toast both his first wedding anniversary and the exciting new deal with Warner Brothers. Tragically, later that night, Roscoe suffered a heart attack in his sleep and passed away at the age of 46. His wife, Addie, honored his wish to be cremated after his death. Thank you for listening to Roscoe Arbuckle's story. If you found it interesting, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time. Welcome to our channel. Today we will be looking at the life of Britt Ekland, a Swedish actress, model, and singer. Britt Ekland was one of the most famous blonde actresses of the 1970s, possessing beauty, talent, and charm. Although she seemed destined for superstardom, her romantic choices often derailed her career. Britt Ekland, whose birth name is Britt Marie Ekland, was born on October 6, 1942. Her father is Sven Ekland, a famous Swedish athlete. Britt enjoyed a high-class social life through her father. As her fame grew, it began to surpass her father's, leading to international recognition. Like many others, she faced challenges during her teenage years. Britt admitted that she struggled with her body image. However, she focused on her strengths, played to her comedic talents, and tried to make those around her laugh. Britt's early success was partly due to her striking resemblance to the famous blonde actress Brigitte Bardot. After overcoming what she called her ugly duckling years as a teenager, Britt worked as a Bardot look-alike. This led to her joining a traveling theater company during her teenage years. While in Italy, a talent agent from 20th Century Fox spotted her at Piazza Venezia, where she was sipping a cappuccino. Britt's stunning looks and comedic talent caught the attention of Fox executives, who wanted to make her their next big star. Following icons like Jane Mansfield and Marilyn Monroe, audiences loved the blonde, and Britt seemed poised to be a big hit. However, her journey to stardom took an unexpected turn when British comedian Peter Sellers saw her picture in a newspaper and fell in love with her at first sight. They were both staying at the Dorchester Hotel in London, and he sent his valet to invite her. Britt was unaware of Sellers' comedic talents, knowing him only from gossip columns about his romantic life. To introduce her to his work, Sellers took her on their first date to see his performance as Inspector Clouseau in The Pink Panther. This was just the beginning of Sellers' attention-seeking behavior. After their first meeting, he bought out the entire flower shop in the Dorchester and brought it to Britt's room. He also gave her a dachshund puppy named Pepper, who, unaware of the tumultuous journey her new owners were about to embark on, became a part of their lives. Britt was deeply infatuated with Sellers, and they were married just 10 days after their first meeting. After the wedding, Britt went to Los Angeles to work on Guns at Battersea, a 1964 British film based on a novel of the same name. During this time, her husband made a disturbing move. Feeling overwhelmed by Sellers' constant surveillance, Britt agreed to spend the Easter holidays with him at his Los Angeles home. However, he had a shocking surprise for her. He arranged for a doctor to examine her because he thought she looked unwell. Although his intentions seemed caring, they were actually manipulative. Britt's doctor told her that she could no longer continue filming due to severe stress and tension. Although she was only 21 and in good health, she realized that she had no way to refuse Sellers or his group of followers. The production team of Guns at Battersea made a very harsh decision. Britt was quickly fired from the film after the production team learned of her condition, resulting in the termination of her short-term contract with 20th Century Fox. This breach of contract also meant that she could not work on films for over a year. It seemed that her future in Hollywood was tied to Sellers, with whom she shared an agent. Sellers took advantage of the situation in a very unsavory way. He convinced the agent to turn Britt down for roles. Every film they made together was a financial failure, putting further strain on their already fragile marriage. Sellers frequently threatened to divorce Britt, only to withdraw his threat a few minutes later and act as if nothing had happened. This behavior confused Britt, who initially failed to grasp the seriousness of the situation. Even something as simple as Britt speaking to her mother in Swedish could lead to hours of arguments with Sellers. Once, when Britt allowed paparazzi to take pictures of the couple at the Excelsior Hotel in Rome, Sellers became enraged. He yelled at her all night, causing other guests to complain about the noise. When he insisted that their agent keep Britt away from him, she decided to move to another hotel and made plans to fly back to Sweden. Despite Sellers' attempts to convince her to reconcile, Britt was certain of one thing: their troubled marriage was finally over. During the divorce, tensions ran high, especially concerning the custody of their daughter, Victoria. Sellers insisted on having custody of the child, but when Victoria visited, he would hire a nanny to care for her. In 1968, the High Court granted Britt a divorce from Sellers. Although 4 years may seem short in the context of a marriage, Britt argued that only someone with great mental strength could have tolerated Sellers' behavior. On the plus side, Britt's wealthy upbringing made her well-suited to mingle with Sellers' famous friends. Instead of the usual weekend parties, she found herself dining with Princess Margaret or hunting with the Queen. Raised as a Swedish upper-class woman, she felt completely at home in British high society, so much so that she even dated one of its members. It was not unusual for her to resume dating after her divorce. One of her first relationships was with Lord Lichfield, the Queen's cousin. However, she quickly lost interest, finding him rather boring. Apparently, her previous relationship had raised her expectations of romance. Away from the British aristocracy, Britt turned her attention to a more glamorous figure, the notorious Warren Beatty, known as Hollywood's heartthrob. Britt herself could not resist his charms, writing in her memoirs, "He could handle women as smoothly as operating an elevator." Given Beatty's reputation, it is no surprise that his relationship with Britt was complicated. During their time together, Beatty was openly dating actress Julie Christie. To avoid Christie discovering their relationship, Britt and Beatty would sneak out to adult cinemas. Britt questioned Beatty's interest in watching others on screen, finding it strange and confusing. Their relationship did not last long. William Friedkin, director of The Exorcist, cast Britt in his 1968 film The Night They Raided Minsky's. Filming took place during Britt's divorce from Peter Sellers, who was reportedly affected by the project. Sellers was furious about the raunchy scenes Britt performed, contributing to their breakup. In a way, however, it became a form of revenge. The Night They Raided Minsky's premiered just 4 days after Britt's divorce was finalized, and her performance garnered her the critical acclaim she had always craved. Now free and successful, she embraced her new status as a famous 70s model, making the most of the attention from her breakthrough role in The Night They Raided Minsky's. Britt starred alongside Michael Caine in the classic film Get Carter, which cemented her status as one of the top blonde bombshells of the time. Her role as Mary Goodnight in the 1974 James Bond film The Man with the Golden Gun was memorable but often criticized, as she was seen as one of Bond's less competent sidekicks. This role largely contributed to her reputation as a glamour girl of the 1970s. A pivotal moment in her life came at a party in Los Angeles, where she met Rod Stewart, who chose to spend time with her instead of socializing with rock legends like Joni Mitchell, Bob Dylan, and Paul McCartney. The chemistry was instant, and they quickly became inseparable. Despite their close bond, Britt and Stewart came from very different backgrounds. Britt hailed from a wealthy family, while Stewart grew up as the son of a working-class builder. She introduced him to classic fashion, art, and a more refined lifestyle. Stewart, in contrast, was pragmatic in their relationship. He rarely bought her gifts and insisted that she contribute to the rent and phone bill. This was a stark contrast to the treatment she received during her marriage to Peter Sellers, but she loved him deeply. One of the major problems in Britt's 4-year marriage to Sellers was that she neglected her film career, which was just beginning to take off. Likewise, her relationship with Stewart caused her to turn down opportunities at the height of her fame. Once again, Britt prioritized her love life over her career ambitions, leaving her home in London to join Stewart in Los Angeles. The relationship ended bitterly after 2 years, with Britt Ekland having no fond memories of it. Navigating the dating scene in the 1970s was particularly difficult for her, during which she had a brief relationship with actor George Hamilton. She was confident in her ability to attract anyone she wanted, but this was not due to promiscuity. Rather, she wanted to assert her status as one of the most desirable women of her time, and preferred the thrill of flirting to the thrill of real relationships. In 1988, Britt became a mother for the 3rd time when she gave birth to her son, Thomas Jefferson. Slim Jim Phantom, the drummer for the band Stray Cats, fathered her 3rd child. She credits motherhood with helping her maintain her composure, as she had children in her 20s, 30s, and 40s. However, after the birth of her 3rd child, she realized that she wanted to make a significant change in her life. With complicated relationships with her ex-partners, she decided not to introduce another man into her children's lives after her divorce from Slim Jim Phantom. However, she admits that she hasn't stopped making mistakes. Britt Ekland, known for her stunning looks, has always wanted to maintain her appearance. This desire led her to seek cosmetic enhancements over the years. Unfortunately, she faced criticism on social media after a botched lip surgery, which resulted in painful revision surgeries that didn't completely fix the problem. Britt openly admitted to her vanity, acknowledging that her beauty played a major role in her career success. In the 2004 film The Life and Death of Peter Sellers, Britt reflected on her difficult relationship with Peter Sellers. A pivotal moment that made her realize her marriage to Sellers was a mistake occurred shortly after she moved to Hollywood. She received a long, cryptic 3-page letter from him, filled with his unfounded fears of her infidelity with her co-star, John Layton. Sellers even went so far as to have mutual friends and other members of the film's crew, David Lodge and Graham Stark, secretly watch her on set. In the 1970s, Britt made significant contributions to the horror genre by appearing in several films. In 1972, she starred in What the Peeper Saw, Endless Night, and Asylum. One of her most famous horror films is The Wicker Man, released in 1973, in which she portrayed the seductive Willow McGregor. The film is often referred to as the Citizen Kane of horror films. Despite its critical success, the production faced numerous difficulties and was not an easy experience, particularly along the Scottish coast. Britt has not commented on the film for years, claiming that everyone was on their own during production. One of her concerns involved the personal aspect of filming, as her character, the flirtatious daughter of an innkeeper, required her to perform a revealing dance. She requested to appear topless only because she had just learned she was 3 months pregnant and felt insecure about her body. However, the producers needed a full-body shot for the scene, so they found a creative solution by hiring a stripper from Glasgow who was willing to take on the role. This decision was not meant to diminish Britt's appeal, as The Wicker Man ultimately gave her one of the most successful roles of her career, cementing her place in popular culture. We hope you enjoyed our exploration of the life of Britt Ekland. That's it for this episode. Thank you for joining us.